In the interest of not keeping you too long, we're going to go right on ahead and talk about Michigan 24, Michigan State 17. This is one that is like perplexing, but that's
Yeah.
kind of been the theme for a lot of Big Ten games so far this season. We just talked about it on my live stream, Big Ten pregame, which leads into this one. We got live stream after live stream after live stream tonight, people.
All right.
Um, there are a lot of Big Ten games amongst kind of middle tier Big Ten teams this season where the stats just don't line up with the story of the game. And I think that's the
Right.
case with this one. Michigan guts out a win despite being outgained 352 to 265, losing the rushing battle 163 to 119, and only possessing the ball for 22 minutes in this one. If you would have told me all that leading into the game, I would have said, I'm just not watching. I don't know if I'm man enough to handle taking a loss to Michigan State and seeing it unfold live. Not going to lie.
Right.
Ultimately, they get it done, though. Maze Madman, what are your overarching thoughts about this game? And on Michigan as a whole, too? We should really, while we have you here, get your thoughts on the Michigan program as a whole.
Sure. So coming into this game, I got word a couple days before it was announced that Davis Warren would be the starter. I had pretty strong feelings on Davis Warren early in the season. That said, I have to be honest. He has been by far Michigan's best thrower of the football um, all season, even when he was throwing to the other team uh, with impunity. So I was kind of taken aback by that news, and it didn't give me great feelings. I'll be honest. I didn't feel warm and mushy inside. I thought that meant we would lose this game, if I'm being fair. But I thought he played a tremendous game considering the circumstances. Usually, when you start a season, you get pulled, and then two more quarterbacks play, and they go back to you. That's not a great sign, right?
Right.
But in this case, it worked out for Michigan. Aiden Childs is a young guy, but he has ability, and that kind of gave me some cause for pause, especially the first two drives for Michigan State. They
Yeah.
go right down the field, right? And it looks like it's going to be a long night for Michigan. They can't really stop anything at that time. And on our end, there's a 3-and-out, and it just doesn't look great. But I will say I appreciate the creativity and the imagination on the offensive side, especially as the game waned. They start mixing in Alex Orji, and it really looked well oiled this time, right? It wasn't just, oh,
Yeah.
let me put you in there, run a quarterback power, get out of here. That's your time. It did look a little better. I'm sorry. The run game was non-existent, but when runs needed to be made, I felt like the Don made a couple decent runs. They weren't long at all, but just to keep it honest, and the fact that Alex Orji was the leading rusher in this game says a lot as well. Overall, I thought it was a decent performance. They got up by 2 scores at one point. That it did get a little more interesting than I thought it needed to be, but this was a solid win for a team that's coming off 2 losses in a row. A horrible loss a week before off of a bye week. This is how you answer in a rivalry game at your home field in front of America. You win this game. So that was big for Wolverines. That was big for their confidence. I'll even go as far as to say the little skirmish at the end was big for morale, right? The team coming together in a different way. And even though you hate to see that sort of thing, I certainly wasn't a fan of it. But coming together to protect, your guys is another thing, right?
Yeah.
Overall, I think the program is it's hard to tell week to week. I will say that. I do think they're moving in a good direction. In terms of recruiting, I like what the coaches have done, but in terms of like the product on the field, there is a lot to be desired, which kind of puts you in a catch-22 situation. I think there should be some turnover. I'm not going to get into people losing their jobs, though. I won't go that far, but I do think there needs to be some attrition along the coaching staff, but I like where the program is headed. if we're being honest, Michigan was never going to be great this year. Everything that was lost offensively, there's one returning starter on the offense, and that's Colston Loveland.
Thank you
There's
for saying that. I just
yeah,
interrupt real quick. I said that on the Michigan call-in show the other night, and I got flack for it. I'm like, this is what it is.
right. Yeah,
Sorry.
and I think we
Yeah.
forget that. Like people take that for granted. Like when you lose nearly 100% of your offensive production, that's kind of crazy. In fact, we're towards the bottom of college football in returning offensive production, right?
It was
Um,
36% heading into the
yeah,
season. We
it's
were
pretty
tied for
bad.
last in the Big Ten. Yeah.
And even though people look at the names on defense, the depth is different than it was a season ago, right? We can't
Mhm.
go 2, 3 deep at corner and things like that, right? Once we start digging on that defense or digging on that bench, you, it gets pretty spooky. It's it's Halloween season, and it's definitely spooky at the end of the Michigan bench right now. Um, so yeah, not to be too long winded, but that's how I feel about where the program is. There are things to be excited about moving forward, and
Mhm.
I would like to see the creativity continue, especially with the offensive play calling. I think Wink Martindale in the last 2 weeks has been a lot better than he was before these last 2 weeks. I think Jayshon Barham has finally come to play football for Michigan, and that's been great to see as well. Josiah Stewart, if he was 4 inches taller, 20 pounds heavier, would be talked about as a potential first pick overall.
Yep. Agree.
He's an
Agree.
absolute beast.
Yep. The only
So
thing that's
Michigan
gonna
has a
hold him
lot
back
to
is his size and lack of it. Yep.
exactly. So
Yep.
with that said, I'll hand it back over to you.
No, I know this probably isn't gonna make for the most interesting radio. I always say radio like a boomer. The most interesting stream because I mostly agree with you on all this
Yeah.
stuff. In fact, I agree with you on most all these points. It's really hard to get a read on Michigan. There have been I've been doing shorts about it, and I've been doing videos about it on my channel, I don't know about yours. But these and I don't think it's loud. I don't think there's a lot of people in the Michigan fandom sphere. There are some slightly more prominent people I see out there kind of not really directly calling for this yet, but kind of wondering and prognosticating if this will be the case or if it should happen. But there are people talking about firing Sharon Moore. And
Yeah.
I'm just like, stop. You can't.
I've
After
seen
one
that.
season, you cannot fire. First of all, it's not going to happen
Yeah.
because Ward Manuel's not going to fire him. So it's not even a conversation in my mind. And second of all, he could be a bad head coach. Granted, he could be Steve Sarkisian. Remember, Steve Sarkisian got fired at USC, had to like beg Nick Saban for a job, and then now look where he has Texas.
Right.
Do you
Yeah.
want to see Sharon Moore coaching at Oklahoma in the Final Four of the playoff in a few years?
Exactly.
You never know. And with the talent he's bringing in, like you said, it's it's paradoxical, right? Like with the talent he's bringing in, and especially maybe we can touch on this for a minute. We kind of talked about this backstage, whether we'd really talk about it or not. The potential of bringing in the number one quarterback in the class, and I
Yeah.
hear from confirmed like much better reporters than I, because I'm not even a reporter. I'm a fan sitting in my bedroom talking about this.
Right.
There's smoke to the Bryce Underwood stuff with him doing that and knowing, by the way, we got to judge him by his entire body of work too.
Hmm.
He was a great offensive line coach. He was a great offensive coordinator last season in the Alabama game that you mentioned. That was a lot of him.
Hmm.
And you're going to sit here and you're also going to tell me that you know a bit more about football and football coaches than Jim Harbaugh, because he was handpicked by Jim Harbaugh to take over
Right.
this program. Similar to David Shaw, who, by the way, put Stanford into Rose Bowls after Jim Harbaugh left.
Right.
So this talk about Sherrod Moore getting fired potentially is just wild to me. I'm glad Michigan won this game so that they didn't get louder. And also to your point, it's really hard to tell, right? Because I think, and I want to get your thoughts on this because I know you're a bit of a recruiting guy. So I want to get your thoughts on the Underwood stuff, but I also want to get your thoughts on the fact that I really think this is one of the most important recruiting classes for Michigan right now, because they've had a couple of subpar classes leading into this. So it's hard to really say that like a top 15 class is subpar, but you're Michigan, it should be a little bit better than that.
Yeah.
And you look at the talent coming back next year, and it's going to be not as there's a lot of NFL guys leaving this year.
Yep.
So I want to get your thoughts on the Bryce Underwood stuff, number one, and then they kind of finish out about Michigan, talk about their recruiting generally and what it could be in the future?
Yeah, so I think Sharon Moore has proven to be an excellent recruiter. I'll go that far. He's been a really good recruiter, borderline excellent recruiter. Um, he's made changes in that, hiring the GM, right, Sean McGee, and all the changes they've made there. That's all. These are all like excellent chess moves, um, in terms of the recruiting side, and specifically for Bryce Underwood, it looked like that door was completely shut. Right, all of a sudden you have a guy uh, like Dave Portnoy uh, make a declaration about what he's willing to do to secure Michigan a top-notch quarterback in every class, right? And the wheels start to churn. People, fans start to. One of the first things I thought when I saw Dave make that declaration was, "Hey, why not give it to this kid right down the road, who's the best player in the class? Not just the best quarterback. He's the number one overall recruit in the 2025 class, right?" When I look at the film, he's just doing whatever he wants to do on the football field. Now, granted, he's playing other high schoolers that aren't as good as him most of the time, but it's still pretty spectacular to watch. It would be another Michigan in-state quarterback that would not be going to Michigan, which has happened, now 3 times with him.
Dante
We started
Moore, CJ
exactly,
Carr. Yep.
yeah. So but I'm with you. There is actual smoke here. Um, and where there's smoke, obviously there's a fire. I do think it's going to come down to how Michigan performs down the stretch, what it looks like down the stretch, and what that what they can do in terms of putting a package together. It also may depend on some things happening with LSU. I'm not sure if you've heard, but their OC has been linked to the ECU job
Oh,
after
yeah, I
the
did hear about
season,
that. Yeah.
right? Them losing that game to Texas A&M was a gift as well. If things start to happen
Texas A&M
negatively.
first in the SEC right now, by the way.
I made a joke on the Week Zero podcast of like 4 or 5 weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago, and they were talking about the SEC, and I said the eventual SEC champion, Texas A&M Aggies, will win. Whatever, and it was half-heartedly joking, but at this
Yeah.
point, Texas A&M could be the SEC champions. They have Texas left. I believe they have Texas at home.
Mhm. Big
So
rivalry game.
it can happen, and
Yeah.
that would be something. But I don't want to get too far in the weeds there. But I like what Michigan is doing on the recruiting trail. The number, like you said, 12th ranked class right now. They just picked up a huge 5-star offensive tackle,
Huge, huge.
Andrew Babalola, figuratively and literally. And those are the sort of centerpieces you need to, build classes around. And if they can add that kid from Belleville, now we're cooking with grease, right? So
Yeah.
um, I'm excited about it.
First coach since 1948 for Michigan to win his first game against MSU. Even
Yeah,
Lloyd Carr and Jim Harbaugh didn't do that. And in the same stretch of the same week, brings in the highest rated offensive lineman recruit the school has ever gotten.
yeah.
And you're telling me you want to fire the guy?
It's
No.
wild, man. I just to think, all the things you said, all the things that we've both said about the production that was lost. The coach is gone. The
Yeah.
strength and conditioning coach is gone. Everybody on defense left in terms of the
Mhm.
coaching staff, and nobody's taking that into consideration. He
Yeah.
got the job late in the game. Half the portal was already decided when he
Mhm.
got the job. There are so many things to consider and nobody's considering those things. They're just like, oh, we're looking
Yeah.
at these results. The results say this team is trash or whatever it is, right? Whatever the adjective is there for these results, but you got to give it time. You have to understand what he was dealing with when he got the job. Heck, he didn't even have a contract
Yeah.
until a couple
Right.
games into the season, right? So there's that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there are some mistakes that have been made. There's been some growing pains, but that should have been expected. Over on my channel, I predicted at the beginning of the season that they would go 10-2 with the caveat that I thought they would really ultimately thought they'd go
I'm
9-3.
embarrassed to say what I said they would do.
Oh, did you say they would go back to back?
I said they were going undefeated. They were
Oh,
winning the Big Ten.
oh no. Well, I said the
I
Detroit
kinda
Lions would
talked
win the Joe
myself
Moore
into it
Award,
week by
so
week. Yeah.